Back with another episode of the Blue Turf. Very much not at the Blue Turf today or the world famous Soccer Dome. However, doing it by Zoom. This is Thad Bell from the Kansas City Soccer Journal, and I am joined by, as usual, Erik Bergrud, a CBS Golazo host in the future. Now, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. What a week for indoor soccer in Kansas City, Thad.
It has been amazing. Like, big game. You got to be on the call. How was that?
A little sense of deja vu because I don't know if you recall the first game UCFC played in Kansas City. In fact, I think the score might have been identical going into halftime, 4-1 with a Comets lead. And the second halves were way too similar in terms of what happened in the third quarter. But Kansas City, everything looked good. They scored early. One mistake in the first half led to a set piece goal. And then slowly that third quarter slide that we've talked about so many times that started to take place. And all of a sudden it got a little anxious at Cable Dome Arena. But ultimately the Comets were able to right the ship in overtime and win. But there were a bunch of misses. Ray Lee on one sequence, post crossbar, might have been post crossbar post. It was at least two of them. A missed shootout, a couple near goals by Mikey Lennis too, and so none of those count on the score sheet.
Recording in progress.
So here we are, and it's a victory, and that's good for Kansas City. But Coach Stefan Stokic is going to say, "Here's the things we need to fix."
I think he'll have quite a few things to fix, or at least on his list. I don't say it's probably as bad as what I'm making it sound like, because I don't want to make it sound bad. They won a playoff game against Utica. They go on the road now with a chance to win one of two games and advance. So that's not a bad situation.
No, it isn't. And so they did what they had to do. They held serve at home. They know that going into Utica is going to be a tough environment. The most recent win they had there, you're going to have to go back pre-COVID. And that was the game where Berto scored again and again and again at the end of the game to bring the Comets from behind to a victory. But too many different, on both teams, a lot of different players on those rosters. Last year, Comets went to Utica for the wild card game. We're up, gave up the lead, came back, and then that goal that is in every UCFC highlight reel from here to eternity with Christian Segura putting four players on the ground. And the Comets wanted better this year. The results have been mixed. If you add that game Monday, 2 wins for Kansas City and 2 wins for Utica so far.
Yeah, it's also going to be interesting, but before we go talk about the next game a little bit, is there anything you saw that led to the third quarter, the second half in general, turning tide towards Utica, or is it just I don't know. Is there anything you saw?
Well, it's a combination of things. I think there were several misses, and it's easy to go back and say, how would the game have changed if? It's like if I asked you that, how would the Sporting game had changed when they were up 3-0 and if Agata converted that penalty kick? We'll never know, right? So if I were to ask you, how would have things changed if Nacho's shootout had gone in? I mean, yeah, they gave up goals. They didn't score goals. But what I saw Monday, which was similar to that first game in Kansas City, was UCFC's commitment to the transition game. Every time Coughlin catches the ball, he's looking downfield. Somebody's making a run. And too many times this year, UCFC has successfully caught Kansas City on the transition. And so they committed to it in that third quarter. And it worked. But I think there were opportunities where if the ball had gone a different way for Kansas City, would we be having the same kind of conversation? You can't go back and change that, but suffice it to say, UCFC is going to continue to press Kansas City. They, more than any other team, will press Neto because they think that that works for them. Kansas City scored a goal by beating the press, and Nick and I talked about that on air. So I expect UCFC to press Kansas City again on Monday night at the Odd or Adirondack Bank Center. I expect Kansas City to try to break the press. I think the trick is, how do you prevent being countered? And that's been an Achilles for the Comets, not just against UCFC, but most notably against UCFC.
Did and I have to confess, I did not see the game live. I was had every intent to, but I had plans with family and friend to do something on Monday. I was down in borderline Arkansas doing the eclipse, watching it, taking some photos, and doing my very level best to get back to Cable Dahmer Arena to see the game. And too many people have minor accidents, so long traffic jams coming back. So I was listening to a large part of it on the phone while a friend of mine was like holding it up so we could still get reception, and every once in a while glancing over. But I've been watching bits of it as I've had some time to watch parts of the game. But was there something the Comets did to try to limit that in the second half, or limit that transition, or were they just more susceptible to it? Do you think they should have done something?
No, not necessarily. I think what was noticeable was near the end of the game in the fourth, they held back defenders, and we had commented, Nick and I, on that first game. One of the things that Everton changed is in the second half against Kansas City, he dropped Mo Ndiaye back to what I call the world famous Kansas City Soccer Dome defense, where you keep one defender back. You don't typically see that in the pros, but it seemed to work. Kansas City dropped one or two defenders in the fourth, trying to get into overtime, and it played off. I think part of what makes a good coach great is the ability to adjust in game. What was different this time is Everton was not there. Everton was in Nicaragua with U.S. Futsal, allegedly staying in contact with the team via phone, which I'm sure he was. I don't know how much he was able to communicate during the game as opposed to pregame and halftime, but making those adjustments on the bench is critical.
Yeah, I wonder if he was had the game up on a laptop or another phone and like trying to do both and call in the plays at the same time, call in the subs. That'd be kind
No,
of
I don't
funny.
know. I mean, they knew this was coming. The one thing I will say that was noticeable for us, we had heard great things about Kelvin Oliveira. Saw him play in the TST tournament. He was MVP, but you see one thing on TV, when you see it in person, it's something else. And
Yep.
he totally took that team. If there was concern about depth, he should have allayed all those concerns, because 2 goals, 1 assist. I don't know what was the most impressive of the three. His first goal, he shot across the body from his left. The second goal, he took on a defender, shot it from his left, went across Neto to score. But then the assist he had, it was sort of a touch back heel to Gordy Gerson that led to a goal. That might have been the best of the three plays that he made there. He is going to be one of the best players in the MASL when he gets a full season in. He had only been at 2 practices. That's it. And he's already carrying that team. And so I know we're going to talk about players missing because of futsal duty, but I think Oliveira is ready to step up and carry this team.
Yeah, well, no doubt that he's going to like be the leading player for the next match. Missing the Utica will be missing their top two scorers, I believe, for the season, and going to off to futsal. So I think he's going to be called on to step up and score those goals, which is, I mean, he was what I've watched already. He's been pretty darn amazing for a player who, like you said, only had a couple practices.
Well, and so now that Kansas City has seen him, I'm undoubtedly they're going to adjust how they defend them. They were adjusting on the fly in terms of who do we man mark him, who do we put on him, and so I would expect Kansas City to adjust defensively. He got more playing time than I, not necessarily that I anticipated, but he didn't start the game. But ultimately, after a point in the first period, it felt like he was not only on every other shift, but maybe multiple shifts too. And he's that good, and he's the type of person, a la Nick Pereira, who wants the ball, wants to carry the team, and his touch is something. So I think that team is going to have more confidence than you might think going into a game 2 and a potential game 3 knockout game.
They probably will. Definitely more than we would have expected before we had seen him play. It's still weird that you can sign a guy and he doesn't show up until the playoffs, but yeah, that's the way life is.
Well, but if you think about it, the Comets signed Mats Falk
Yep.
late last season. He might have gotten into 1 or 2 regular season games, but that's the closest approximation there.
Yeah, and he had at least had been with the team before.
Sure. Been a while.
No, and even in that I thought was a little bit odd. I mean, as much as Mads could bring in, I still thought it was a little bit odd bringing a guy in who hadn't been with the team for a while. Because I know I talked to him and he's like, "Oh yeah, I remember the game. I played with some of these guys before." Still not the same.
He did score the tying goal that took the game into overtime at Utica last playoffs, though. So he did make an impact.
He did.
Just wasn't meant to be.
Not as much impact as they probably had hoped.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of those two players, do you know who those two players are? Tayu and
Nilton De Andrade, both
yes,
different kind of players. Most Comets fans should be well aware of Frank Tayu, who the king, who's scored everywhere he went. He kind of got off to a slow start this season, but at the end, he really shot up in terms of goals per game. I think 5 in one game, 3 in another, and so he was among the league leaders at the end of the season in scoring. De Andrade has been their consistent guy all season long, somebody that we've focused on in previous broadcasts. And that's a lot of talent that's gone. We saw Gerson score this Monday night, so I expect to see Gerson and Oliveira try to pick up the pace for the offense there at UCFC, which for me, they're an offense first team. But what I'm going to be watching for, we heard Nelson Santana get booed like every single time he touched the ball in Kansas City. And I was asking online, so who's going to get booed? And I think it's going to be Rion Marquez, just based on his tussle with Santana that last regular season game in Kansas City. And so be interesting to see what the atmosphere is like, and then how, assuming it is Marquez, how he responds to it. Because for me, I thought he was going to have to be the guy who stepped up for Kansas City this past game. Nick Basso said it had to be Nacho, and as it turned out, it was Nacho.
it was Nacho. I was listening in the car driving back and got to hear you call him a hometown hero after the game, or what I forget how exactly he phrased it, but call him the hero of the game. He very much did the right thing about, no, it's not me, it's the whole team. But man, that was a really darn good goal he did to win the game, wasn't it?
I've watched it multiple times, and what's interesting is some UCFC fans were, let's just say, disappointed with Santana's defending. But if you watch the play, he was at the point, made a pass, and then he made a run into the box, more like a midfielder would do than a defender. And his initial defender didn't follow him in. So he had sort of like a wide open space back post. Shot comes in. Coughlin makes the save, but comes up with the rebound. And Nacho's standing all by himself to knock in that rebound. And so, sure, you can blame the defender in the box, but it was actually one of the attackers who did not follow him all the way through and left him wide open. But that's the benefit about having a midfielder playing defense for you. He brings that attacking mindset, and it's not something you would normally see a defender do in that situation.
No, he has embraced that leadership role as the captain, and uh, again, he's giving credit to everybody else, and you should go back and listen to the interview I did with him in the last pod if you haven't already. But he's just really we've always talked highly of him, I think, because he's always had that ability to score a little bit more than people think he can. But he's just kind of embracing that whole role right now and coming up big.
Well, and I don't. It's not like in the previous franchises where there would be an award ceremony and you would give your MVP, et cetera, et cetera. That's not something that takes place right now. But you can make a strong case for Nacho as team MVP. He didn't have the most goals. He didn't have the most blocks. He didn't have the most saves. But can you think about the Comets being where they are today without Nacho, and particularly Nacho stepping up and being captain? For me, there's no way.
Yeah, I think I would agree.
And I was going to say, and the league will announce, speaking of awards, the league awards coming up. And since I mentioned those other categories, I definitely see Reggett getting strong consideration for the Elite Six team, so first team all league. I think that Pink Panther from Monterrey, Genaro Castillo, will get the MVP. But if you look at other positions, Berto has a really good chance to get Defender of the Year. For me, it's either going to be Berto or Ismael Rojo from Monterrey. And I think Neto has a even better chance to get Goalkeeper of the Year. So it could be that the Elite Six includes 3 Comets. We'll see. Nacho most likely won't get an Elite Six recognition, but he's done so many things that you either see in the score sheet or don't see in the score sheet that have elevated this team, and I think he deserves recognition for it.
Yeah, I think we'll have to come up with our own MVPs and do an award from the pod. What do you say?
That sounds like a good plan. I'm sure there's fans that have their own opinions too. And yeah, I mean, you could do this for the regular season. You could do this. Let's just see how the rest of the season plays out. I know that Comets fans are never shy to share their opinions. And what's been interesting is, speaking of Comets fans, that is the tone seems to have changed. And part of that is the Comets are winning, but I think the Comets fans now see the difference in terms of how this team is playing. That, let's just say, the harder feelings that were being experienced, or not well experienced, were being expressed in February and March. I don't really see them online anymore.
Yeah, I've not noticed that nearly as much. Some of it is time also that they've gotten used to it, but winning, heals all wounds over time, I think.
I think so too. And no matter what happens in Utica on Monday, I think this team has proven its quality. I think this is a team that nobody wants to play against. I can tell you Utica City respects them. And this is a team that's hungry to win. And Comets fans should be proud of that. That it's sort of if you only knew what this team has battled through, not just physically, but emotionally, to be where they are today. It's a great story. And when you hear people like Nacho and Stefan Stokic and Zach Reggett praise the fans and the atmosphere at Cable Dom Arena, it's sincere.
It is. It is. All right. I'm not sure how much time I got left here before I have to kill this, but we got a while. Because not wanting to stop you, because obviously the fans deserve a lot of credit for the the emotion and everything they bring in. But looking to the next game, we've already talked about they're going to be missing a couple players. And I know this has been speculated, discussed in different places, and there was an article on MASLsoccer.com about Zach Reggett, or I would say about him, but one of the mentions was that Zach had been called up to the futsal team and had declined it, turned it down, whatever the right term there is, to stay and play. And while I have never heard anything that I can officially say, I would say it jibes with what I do understand.
Well, I think the fact that well, so let me take a step back. There were multiple players who were called up who were allowed to play this past weekend, and then they were reporting to camp in Nicaragua after their last game. This was true for four players on the Texas Outlaws who played a ultimately 3 game series with San Diego. That's true for the two Utica City players who played in Kansas City the other night, Frank Tayu and Milton De Andrade. The difference is if you saw the announcement from the MASL that next Monday's game is going to be not on Twitch, but it's going to be on CBS Sports Golazo.
Yep.
Who was the Kansas City player in that graphic?
Zach Reggett, was it? Was that correct?
Well,
Yeah.
that would tell you a lot whether he's going to be playing or not.
Yeah, I was pretty sure he was already going to be since he wasn't on that futsal roster. But I, again, speculation, a little bit on the whys or anything. I don't want to go too far into that, but I think that says a lot about Zach not wanting to leave his team. I'll just leave it at that.
This is it's a challenging situation for everybody in the league because this isn't like other leagues. Sure, so this has been an issue in Major League Soccer with players getting called up, but that's players getting called up in the regular season. You don't. I can't recall, Thad, a player being called up the week of the MLS final. It doesn't happen. They've been able to schedule even during the playoffs. They've been able to schedule an international break. So this notion that everybody has to make that sacrifice in other leagues, it's a little bit of apples and oranges. And so this situation is difficult. I know that there are some UCFC fans that were aghast that this came up, that they were going to lose two of their top players as a result of this. And but this is where we are. The fact that you have an indoor soccer league that has this tie with futsal,
Yep.
which is a very different sport with a very different calendar. And it just so happened that the stars collided in April 2024. The FIFA tournament, the World Cup actually is in September, so that's off calendar. There won't be any impact for anybody in MASL should the U.S. qualify past CONCACAF.
Yeah, it won't impact other than maybe some early training camp sort of stuff, but that's quite all right. And yes, MLS has been impacted by it in the past, but they've tried to work around it, especially for the playoffs. But they have been impacted by players going and coming back, not being ready to play, things like that. Even more recently, NWSL has been impacted by that in the past also, which is kind of ironic with Andonovski having to been on both sides of that, having his players taken away from him when he needed them, and having been the one taking them away when he needed them.
Well, I don't know if you recall this. In February, there was a futsal camp in Argentina, and a bunch of players were called up, including Zach Reggett. And there were players that came back injured from that camp. And so it's a challenge in any part of the world when your players get called up from a team to a national team, and there are no guarantees. But yeah, maybe there are stories to be told after this. You and I are probably not the people to tell those stories. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in Utica on Monday.
Oh, I'd like to tell those stories, just don't know if people will tell them to me. Uh, all right. Yeah, and again, players coming back injured, that's happened all too often. It's already happened with the current this year with Nichelle Prince going off to one of the camps and being injured there. Uh, it's it's part of the life in this type of sport. Also, one reason people criticize the MLS All-Star game because they've had players go off and be hurt in that. Aurelian Collin, I think, once or twice. He went off and came back injured, and I think there was another sporting player that went off to an All-Star game and came back injured. So there's always all those types of issues, and it's just a risk that you run. I guess baseball, you could go off to an All-Star game and get injured also, but it's just a little less contact.
Right.
So anyway, hopefully hopefully in the future they will look at the schedule and try to work around it a little bit differently. I think this is just one of those complicating ones because Utica has the coach of both Utica FC and the futsal team, and having to call up his own players just makes it probably just that much more bitter in some ways.
Well, yeah, and that's just you're not going to see this happen every year, and it is what it is. So it's not like people didn't know this was coming. It's really more of an issue. What do you do with it when it hits you on the calendar? But we've known for a long time that this was going to be an issue.
Absolutely. All right, what does the Comets have to do to win in Utica one of these two games, the regulation game or the what's the official term, 15-minute extra
Knockout
game?
game.
Yeah, I
It is
still
the
prefer
knockout game.
minigame.
So historically, the Comets have, when they won the championship in 14, they got blown out of game two and won the knockout game. So there's a school of thought that you wait for three. There's another school of thought, and I'll even share this for the 10 for 10 series. I interviewed Kevin Healy, the Harrisburg Heat president, who
Yep.
longtime executive with the Baltimore Blast, and his attitude with Baltimore was, "We're going to win game two. We're going all in. We're not going to bring additional players and kind of get cute with this and try to do the knockout. We're in it to win it." And so it will be interesting to see. I suspect Coach Stokic is more of that mindset, but you do have to hedge your bets a little bit. If you come up short in game two and there's a player hurt, have you brought a backup just in case? You have to think about all these technicalities and scenarios. But from a mindset perspective, I anticipate that Kansas City is going to want to win that second game. Now, if you're UCFC, I think you do a lot of things that you did in Kansas City. You press, and they will continue to press Neto. They got burned once by it, but they think that's going to be successful.
Yep.
I think they quick on the counter. So every time you see Andrew Coughlin with the ball in his hands, expect him to fire it out down the field to set up somebody to score. And a lot of Nelson Santana matching up. We saw him Monday night mainly against Ragged. And we'll see if they switch him off and put him back on Marquez this time. But expect no open space for Reagan or Marquez. They're going to have to earn their goals.
They will. I'm sure it'll be fast and physical and furious and pretty entertaining game in the long run.
And if I could do a quick commercial on
Do it.
that. So I have the privilege of being able to call that game. The MASL is going to do something interesting. This will be the second game, not on Twitch, but it'll be on CBS Sports Golazo. And they invited me to join UCFC play-by-play announcer Ray Biggs on the call. He typically calls the games by himself. So he's graciously sharing or opening up a second seat. And we're going to call the game. And it won't be a Homer-type atmosphere. We're going to be calling the game for the league, which hopefully most viewers will appreciate. I imagine some Comets fans will want me to be more pro-Comet, and I'm sure there'll be UCFC fans that'll want Ray to be more pro-Utica. But in the end, it'll be a great experience. And these are two of the best teams in the MASL, so it should be a good showcase for the league and for the viewers.
Well, I don't doubt it. I'll be watching it here. And although you did have me thinking about a road trip, but I just made a really long road trip, and that's a really long road trip.
That's a really long road trip. So, no, I'm excited for that. And I have never been to Utica, and I've heard that the atmosphere there at the Adirondack Bank Center is incredible. So looking forward to hearing how loud it is. And this will be a great test for the Comets.
I did look, though. It's about 18 and a half hour drive.
That's a pretty long drive.
Yeah, I enjoy driving, but it doesn't enjoy me as much anymore. All right, any oh yeah, like you said you want to do that as advertisement. Does that mean I can get some money from CBS Golazo now as part of an advertisement?
You just throw my name to them and see what happens.
I'll send an invoice. How about that?
You
Send an
can try
invoice.
that. You can absolutely try that.
But even if they don't send me money, do watch on CBS Golazo because it's good coverage for the sport. Couple of good announcers there. Erik and oh, what was his name? Dang it. We
Ray
just said
Biggs.
yes, sorry. I just don't remember those other guys as much as I remember you, so I apologize to those guys.
Appreciate that. Ray is really good, and he knows how to call a game
Yeah.
for effect. And no, he's terrific. I look forward to working with him.
Yeah, I have sometimes complained about announcers in this league, but I do think he is also one of the good ones. So kudos to him and kudos to you. I think it'll be entertaining to see how you guys like work with each other since you haven't worked with each other in that regard.
Well, the last time I worked with somebody else that was with Brian Budzinski, and we spent the whole game calling each other Nick. So we'll see how many times I call Ray Biggs and Nick Vassos. But yeah, Nick Vassos has been extremely supportive. I reached out to him after the league had reached out to me, and he was enthusiastic and encouraging me to do this. So
Oh, no
can't
doubt.
say enough about my partner.
Maybe we can have a warm up game, like, just call an old game or something and for a little fun to warm up.
Just see how it goes, huh?
Yeah, do a little practice.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see, just real quickly on the other playoff news, the Wave defeated the Flash. That's not what I was predicting.
Well, I think many people thought that Milwaukee might pull one Friday night at home, and they almost did. Monterey, again, they find a way to win those close games. And so the conventional wisdom was Monterey was going back home 1-0 up, and they were just going to put Milwaukee to bed. A couple things that didn't work the way they thought. They played at Arena Monterey rather than the Arena Borregos, the smaller arena. And so
Right.
it was a little bit fairer battle in terms of playing surface. So it was more of a regulation size arena rather than the smaller arena. I guess to be technical, everything's in regulation, but more of a conventional, maybe that's the word I'm looking for, size arena. So that worked out better for Milwaukee. And I think we found out this year how good Giuliano Olivero is as a coach, particularly in pressure situations. He's somebody who adjusts really, really well. And I think you found out, even without Leite, even without Ian Bennett, how much heart that Milwaukee team has.
Yeah, it's that would be a tough test for whoever advances out of the Utica Kansas City round. I'm hoping it's the Comets. I'm hoping we get another game here at Kansas City, but that would then put the Comets in the driver's seat for that match.
Yeah, game one, either way, will be in Milwaukee. And then game two, and then the potential knockout game would either be in Kansas City or Utica.
Assuming no stadium arena conflicts on either
No,
side.
I think they've figured this out. So
Okay.
I would expect sometime after Monday's game, an announcement of dates in either direction.
And on the west side, Sockers beat the Outlaws and Chihuahua beat the Stars. So Sockers and Chihuahua will be playing shortly.
That's what everybody expected. Chihuahua is really tough to play down there, and Chihuahua has shown they can win a Pachanga. And so the big test for San Diego is, could they deliver a message there at Corner Sport Arena? If they could, I think San Diego will start feeling really, really good about themselves. But even if they don't, it'll be a battle in San Diego. San Diego has healthy players again. They have a bad taste in their mouth about last year, but Chihuahua believes they can win in San Diego, so it'll be fun to watch.
It will. Any last minute predictions, word, thoughts,
I don't
prophetic?
make predictions. I predict great series entertainment. I think the playoffs across the board have been terrific already this season, and what fans of the league want to see is the expected and the unexpected. And there's been a lot of unexpected.
It's actually where I was going to go. I was going to say if the Comets win the first game in Utica, it's going to be off of a goal from somebody you do not expect it to be from.
That seems to be the storyline. That
All right. I appreciate the time, Mr. Bergerud. Have a safe trip, and I will be listening to you.
appreciate it. Thanks, Thad.
And we are out. Back for another segment on the Blue Turf. This is Thad Bell. With me, I have Coach Stefan Stokic. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad. I bet you're feeling pretty good after a win the other night.
Yeah. I think, I think it shifted pretty quick. It felt great, but now it's on to game two. It's nothing is done. And yes, it was a great win. Don't get me wrong. My first playoff win, first playoff game. So it was very exciting, but then I pretty quickly shifted to game two.
Uh, I was gonna say it has to be pretty exciting just to win that first one as the head coach, but it was a pretty exciting game in itself too.
Yes, it was. I think we shouldn't have let it get to that, in my opinion. We were up 4-1, and we should have finished the game off in the third quarter. But unfortunately, um, I think things didn't go our way. The ball didn't want to go in. I think during the game, I felt like we played a lot. I say a lot worse, but I think we didn't play as good as we did in the first half. But then when I watched the game over again, I think we played okay. The intensity was good. Our quality wasn't there with our passing and decision making, but we still had opportunities to close the game out. And the problem is we didn't put them away. And like I've told you before, we've talked many times. I'm a firm believer of the indoor game being a momentum game and a transition game. So we kind of lost momentum in the third and fourth quarter.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. When I went back and watched it too, there was definitely some opportunities there to have kind of just put it away.
Correct, correct. And our power play offense wasn't as great as well. I think that was not our best showing. And again, we had opportunities to close the game out for sure.
But then goes to the extra time, the overtime. Nacho, like I don't know how many seconds it was in, 20 seconds, whatever it was. It wasn't very long. Nacho puts away a rebound, and all of a sudden it's all happy and celebrations. What was going through your mind at that moment?
To be honest with you, a lot of things went through my mind, but I'm gonna be honest. I'm not trying to be overconfident. Anything can happen. But since the last 7 games now, because we said six, last 7 games, at this point, the boys have this belief, and sometimes you're gonna lose it, sometimes you're gonna win. But I think right now our mindset, our mentality, our quality in overtime has been much better than the past. So I think we improved a lot on that. So um, you know, again, I feel confident now where before it was more frustration. I would be honest with you. But now leading with the boys believing in their mentality, because listen, to be a championship, you have to win games when things don't go your way. And I think we've built that in the last 7 games.
Utica seems to have been a tough opponent for you guys the last few years. Why are they such a tough opponent?
They're a good team. They're very fast. They have quality players. I mean, Utica is a really, really good team, and props to Everton and Utica. I think the players that he brought in accommodate his style and the way he wants to play, and they play a certain way, and it's hard to play against them because they have a lot of pace, they have a lot of quality, they have a lot of goal scorers. So if you can keep that team, below 4 goals, you have a good chance of winning the game. If you let them score more than that, then it becomes a race, in my opinion. So, but again, they're a really good team. I mean, their midfielder is, I think, one of the most dynamic midfields in the league, in my opinion. They're very fast. They just go forward. They're very attacking minded. They're hard to defend, and they finish. The quality of finishing is really good. So, and as well, they're well coached. So I think all that together is just makes it hard to beat them. Even if they have 5 other players, they don't have 5 other players. I think they have depth as well. So It's always a challenge.
And speaking of their depth, they brought in a new player first game against you guys. I mean, he only had a few practices in, but at the same time, he was maybe a wild card for you. You did, I mean, you could see him play outdoor, but you had not seen him in the indoor or face team before. You didn't have like that type of game tape on him, and he was pretty
Correct.
good. What do you have like a new strategy now maybe to
We do, but he's a quality player. I mean, I watched him in the TST. We brought up videos of him. We were looking for videos for him to prep for him, but he's by far probably one of the better players that I've seen. I mean, to be able to come in and not play one regular game and go into a playoff game and have that kind of impact,
yeah.
I mean, tells you the quality of that player, number one. Secondly, you know, he's very, he's gonna be tough to defend because he goes to his left. He's a lefty, but he goes to his right. He's very dynamic, he's crafty. Um, I felt like, throughout the TST he did really, really good, but I felt watching him play live I was like, wow, he's even better than I thought he was gonna be. So, and I think he's gonna be a future candidate, I mean, for MVP next season coming. He's really, really good. Now, would have been a little bit easier if we knew his tendencies and we could have prepared for him. Yes. I mean, it would have been, it was kind of a little bit of a surprise too, but now we know. The players know a little bit more, and he's a really good player.
Yeah, that he was. I have faith that you guys will have a way to maybe limit him. I don't know if you can stop him totally, but maybe
Yeah,
limit him a little bit.
we will
Uh,
try our best.
how's everybody doing, like health wise, going into the big match?
Yeah, I think everybody is good health wise. Zach is fighting the ribs thing still. He played injured in the last game. Um, I think, it was a good thing that we had these 2 weeks to prepare for the game. But a lot of the guys were after the game were like, yeah, we're tight, we're a little bit sore. So I think, we lost a little bit maybe of game fitness, to be honest with you. And that's, I had a big meeting with my coaching staff today after practice, and trying to figure out a way to get the boys as fresh as possible until Monday, and not tight. So they're doing good, but there's that little, having some players being tight is kind of a little bit concerning for us. But we have another, 4 days until game day. So
Then you not only have to prepare for a game, but possibility of a third game. What they don't call it the mini game anymore. I forget what to actually call it officially now, but you got to be prepared for that potentiality. Will you take an extra player or two just in case, or is there any strategy to that?
yeah, there is. Our first strategy is not to get to the mini game, because I think in the mini game anything can happen, right? I think,
Right.
15 minutes, you get a couple lucky bounces and you end up winning the game of not being. I mean, we saw it against Monterrey and Milwaukee, right? So
Yeah.
our main objective is to avoid that. But if it does go into that, yes, we do have a strategy and a game plan. We are bringing a couple players with us, so we're going to be prepared for that as well.
Yeah, I didn't think you would actually tell me the real complete strategy there, but hey, I have to ask these questions, right?
Yes, yes, of course.
All right. It was a crazy environment there. That just I know I always ask this type of question, but just how big was the crowd for that win the other night?
It was amazing. I think we were like, there's not going to be as much as people as they usually there, but I'm going to be honest with you, it felt like there was a lot more than there ever was. They're very loud, cheering. I mean, it makes a huge difference, and it pushes the boys. It gives them another motivation. It's unbelievable. The fans that we have and we're grateful and thankful. We talk about it with the players and the coaches, and the aspects here. It just brings another level to the guys. And that seventh person, the seventh player, they are the
Yep.
seventh player for us. To be honest with you, they are. It's. I mean, again, I've talked on the past show. Was it last week? I, as a player, I've been here for a long time, since the beginning, and I've never seen this crowd be as loud and into the game as I have this year, and it's been unbelievable. So we're grateful and thankful for everybody coming out, and you guys are truly the best fans in the league.
All right. Uh, I don't think I'm going to take up too much more of your time, Coach, but I just appreciate it and good luck in Utica.
No problem. Thank you. Appreciate it.